Evaluation is critical to what we do. We, as an organisation, are trying to come up with really good service solutions to improve services for people affected by cancer. The best way of doing that is to try things and to learn from them.
I think today's workshop has been a really useful process of bringing together people who have experience in large change and transformational projects, and also in evaluating them. What I've learnt so far is that there is no registered blueprint on how to measure the outcome of system redesign. We're in new territory here.
When you're evaluating whole systems change programs, there are a whole range of different challenges that face you, but really the main one is that of complexity. My top tips for the evaluator really follow from the challenge of complexity. The first is to understand that you're in a complex environment and that you can't apply traditional evaluation techniques in that environment. You must accept the complexity and do something about it, not to wish it away.
So there's an important debate to be had in thinking about systems change. A lot of us have used logic models as a basic way of structuring our conceptual thinking around the evaluation that we're doing. The advantage of that is that it makes the intervention clear, the outcomes clear, it gives you things that you ought to be measuring and assessing, and allows you to form a judgment. The downside is that it is ineluctably linear. Systems are not linear. Systems react in unanticipated ways. They bubble, they're turbulent, they shift, you get cliff edges that you'll suddenly drop off, and they're very, very difficult to analyse in a linear manner. However, that said, I would argue that in most of the evaluations that we do in and around healthcare, they're not completely chaotic systems, they're not incredibly messy, they are just fluid and flexible, but they have degrees of stickiness and they have degrees of institutional rigidity and path dependency. Those are all things that you can evaluate and give you some stability in the thing that you're evaluating.
One of the common traditional tools used in evaluation is that of a logic model, and I think the logic model has its place. I just don't think its place is in terms of looking at system change. The logic model works off a very linear logic. If we do this, then that will result. If that results, then this will result. But that's not the way that systems work. Systems have different emergent characteristics, and that's what makes it a system. Evaluators must respond.
There's a danger that we exaggerate the difference between people who use logic models and the people who don't. Even using logic models, where we know the world changes, that there's a need for iteration, it's not perfectly linear, and that we need to course, adapt and change.
One of the things that I've been struck by is the conversation we've had today is that Macmillan do some evaluation before we as evaluators come anywhere near a project. So in terms of looking for sites, locations, individuals to participate in the programmes and projects that Macmillan fund, they're already making an assessment about whether they are in the right place, whether the right people who will be leading them. And I think it's very interesting for Macmillan to reflect back on some of the learning that we as evaluators bring to the project, to reflect on how they go about that evaluative process in the beginning to ensure that they maximise the success of the projects and programmes that they support.
I think keep an open mind and remain flexible. It's not always clear where your evaluation is going to lead in the early days. So I think the evaluators as well as clients need to be flexible about allowing an evaluation to take its own course.
So very often these programmes won't deliver the outcome for people affected by cancer for many years after the intervention. What this means is it's very difficult for the evaluators who have to deliver evaluation in a 3 or 5 year time frame. So you're constantly looking for what are the surrogate measures which tell you that you are making progress towards the goal.
I think the other thing about evaluating system change programs that I think presents a fundamental challenge to evaluators, but also to organisations like Macmillan, is the relationship between the evaluator and the programme. I think the relationship needs to get much more hands-on. I think the sense of having distance between evaluator and programme, I think, has to go.
I think one of the big challenges in evaluating whole system change is the balance between the need for evaluators to capture learning so that we can take principles to other parts of the organisation, and being accountable. That is, the evaluators evaluating for judgment.
I think maybe the main thing for me has been about the importance of learning. So how can we at Macmillan encourage people who are trying things out to learn from each other? There's a real energy in the room. So people have come along today from Macmillan and from many other organisations because they feel really passionately about the role of evaluation. So the quality of the conversations has been amazing. And I think there's also been some really interesting links between people made.